Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Lynn Hunter. I'm one of the training producers at Informa Connect Academy, based in the Dubai office. So thank you very much for joining us. For those who might not know who Informa Connect Academy are, we are the largest conference and exhibition and training company in the world. We actually have offices around the world. We've got over 30 offices around the world. We're actually a UK company, part of the FTSE 100, but we have offices dotted around in various locations. The Informa Connect Academy is a partnership between the Informa office in London, the one in Dubai, and the office in Australia. And where we really specialise is the conferences, exhibitions, but also our training division as well. So thank you to those who have joined us. We're going to have the webinar today, which is Process Management, Architecture, Design and Improvement with Amin Issa. And this webinar is going to be around 45 minutes of Amin taking you through some of that content. And then what we'll have at the end is we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So you will see on your screen, there's a questions and answers tab. You can pop some questions in there. And at the end of Amin's session, I will be able to ask Amin those questions and get some answers for you. The webinar will also be shared once it's finished. We will share the webinar with you, and it's posted onto our social medias, etc. So we will share a recording of the webinar with you, not the slides directly, but we will share the recording of the webinar with you as well. So I'm going to pass you over to Amin Issa, who's going to take you through this particular topic. So Amin has worked with Informa Connect Academy for a number of years and is one of our senior trainers. He has over 35 years of experience. I know you wouldn't think it to look at him, but he has over 35 years of experience. And he's worked in a variety of very senior roles in strategy, execution, performance management, excellence, quality assurance, process transformation, customer service. So he's worked for a number of different organizations. So Amin obviously brings to this particular webinar a lot of experience in this topic. So I'll pass you over to Amin. Thank you, Amin. I'll pass to you and let you begin the webinar.
Thank you very much, Lynn. It's always a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Right. Good afternoon for everybody, and I hope that you are going to benefit from this webinar. And I'm trying to share my experience and the content that I will use in my training courses, in this specific training courses. This is, as Lynn was saying, based on 35 years of experience in the topic, and going through the phases of the ISO 9000 1994, the ISO 9000 2000, then 2008, and then the emerging of the new excellence models and the different process methodologies. And that's what I will be sharing with you. It's going to go through a lot of journey of what my experience was over the last 35 years in this topic, including, I was representing Jordan in ISO 9000 in ISO organization, and also part of one of the founders of King Abdullah II Award for Excellence, which was built on Malcolm Baldrige model. Right, let's get started, and not to waste so many of your times. The objective of this webinar is the objective of the course, but it's going to be summarized in this webinar, is to understand the value of business process management and improvement, BPMI, and the main concepts of business process management analysis, mapping, and modeling. Also, it's going to be how to produce business process model at the correct level of the details to aid the analysis and readability of an understanding of the organizational responsibilities. Learn the best practices, techniques, and methods to coherently map, accurately measure, and thoroughly analyze business processes and work activities that you are going to measure in these or to document in these processes across the whole organization. I'm going to be suggesting and introducing new concepts based on my experience in actually implementing the things that I will be talking about and improving them and honing them as we went along in my career in the past 35 years. Also, we're going to talk about how to improve an organizational process management effectively, redesign and improve your process, re-engineering, some people call it, and deliver appropriate process and task documentation. Although after 2008, We were relieved from all the documentation that was necessary in the 1994 and even in the 2000 model or standard, ISO 9000 standard. Assess the potential reaction to change and how to maintain the culture of continual improvement and process management is going to be the last two slides. Now, this is a model that I built based actually on the recommendation of a good colleague and friend of mine in Informa. I mean, make it in a model because people like models. And so I built this model back in 2016. I worked on it, but it was not structured as such. And this model is something that I created to actually document and make it easy to understand what I'm talking about and what is process management. There are 6 steps. As you can see, the core is the PPMI culture. And because, you know, if you don't have the right culture, as Mr. Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So this is the main thing that we need to talk about, and I will do and discuss in details later on. There's always Dr. Deming. I mean, without him, all of this would not have happened. He was the father and the creator of all the quality management systems, along with Malcolm Baldrige, and Japan is the big witness on his thoughts, philosophy, and actually implementing it to improve. Now, the 6 steps are, first of all, we need to realize what is the need for BPMI, or process management. And the second one is, how do we adapt our strategy or our processes to our strategy? And I will discuss that briefly. And then the core of this course is understand the process cartography. A lot of organizations build their process management system, and they have it on many levels, on too much details, that becomes a burden. Now, I will explain to you here how 3 levels is more than enough and acceptable by different standards of quality or even of excellence, and they can be effective in actually leading the organization to achieve the outcome in their mission and vision and strategic plan. So the idea is that, and this is proven over the last at least 20 years since I did this, and it's actually proven to be very effective and easy to maintain. And that is the main issue, is that if you document your cartography of processes, you might go into too many details. I remember an example, a company came to me when I was doing some consultancy, and when we discussed it, they had something like 1,800 something processes. And we ended up finally in, I think, 85 processes. And it works, and it's very effective. And it easily can be automated or actually documented on a digital system. We're also going to touch on the customer journey and its connection to process management and step 4. In step 5, we're talking about performance. If you document something, if you want to improve it, you need to measure it. And this is where we talk about how to generate KPIs for the processes of the organization. Finally, if you measure it, if you document it, measure it, you need to improve it. So we will touch on the improvement methods that I've used, and it's all over the world, of course, but the way I use them in my experience, with using simplicity as the key word for that. I always introduce my courses with brainstorming, and brainstorming is an excellent methodology for the team to work together. It's an excellent methodology that I use in consultancy, and we discussed the 5 steps of the brainstorming. One of the things that I introduce is this formula, which I'm very proud of, which is called effectiveness equals quality times acceptance. Because you can have the best model in the world. If there's no acceptance, or if there's fear of change, or if there is resistance, then it will not work, or it will work with problems. So what you want is to achieve the acceptance and adjust your quality or quantity or the size of the change into the organization to achieve the best effectiveness. And I use this formula in the brainstorming, because in the brainstorming, the idea is that you generate a lot of ideas for either solutions, for new products, for any outcome that you want, even for a strategy map, for objectives. The idea is that you get, if you force it on people, it doesn't work. People might accept it, but then reject it later. So I always say that you need to have a methodology to measure the acceptance in any brainstorming session, or any change to the process, or any strategy that you want to do. That's why this formula is very important, and I use it in the brainstorming tool as a method in the training to actually ask people to vote on their best ideas. So if people come into the brainstorming session and they come up with 4 or 5 affinities, for example, or categories of ideas, then I ask them to vote on them anonymously. So nobody knows who voted for what. And then we select the one with the highest votes, which will mean that we have the highest acceptance. So that's something that we will discuss. And I use this tool all the time in all the methodologies that we're going to go through very quickly. Now, we need to define, and this is what I go through the course, is that a process has to have a definition. And the definition is, there's a lot of other definitions around the world. To me, a process is a series of steps that converts an input into an output by adding value to achieve a goal. And this is the core of the concept that I'm pushing in any training or in the consultancy or whatever we're doing. The idea is that you have to have steps that add value. Non-value adding steps have to be recognized and documented in an opportunity flow chart, which I will discuss later. And that process must achieve an outcome. And that outcome is not the output. It's different to the output. It needs to be something else that is aligned with the strategy map or the objectives, the themes, Mahawar strategy in Arabic, or the vision finally. So they have to be aligned. Each of our processes have to be redesigned in every strategic plan, a new strategic plan, to achieve the outcomes, the objectives, or the themes, or the vision. So there's a link between the two, and that's why it's step number 2. Now, I always look at or discuss why do we need process management, because that is a key. If you don't have a need, then nothing will happen and people will resist. So I always say that in process management, the first thing that you need to look at is how do I make my clients happy? Clients is different to customers, and we discuss a lot of things about the clients, the users, the customers, the suppliers, the stakeholders. So you need to understand that, and that's discussed in more details. But then we need to, as we are talking about happy customers, and we use Kano model for that, we need to measure it. So I introduce also the NPS, Net Promoter Score, customer effort score, which is very important nowadays because everybody is too lazy to move out. They want to do everything on their telephone. So any process that we have, we need to understand how easy is it for the customer to actually reach the output or the service. And of course, the old KPI for the clients or the customers is the CSAT. And we discussed that in more details in step 5 and step 6. Also, we need the process management to improve our performance. This is the main idea. I remember when back in 2003, and when I was working with the company, and one of the departments said, Amin, we need to do a process management. And his main reason was Jordan is a source for resources. And at that time, the telecom company, the telecom industry was recruiting a lot of the Jordanian talent. So what he said, I want to have the right process management documentation and review and also improvement to maintain my business continuity, because I'm losing all my staff all the time. So it could be to improve their performance, it could be to have the better resources or better use of resources, and it could be for business continuity, because if you train people on the new processes, then you don't need to, when you get new people, then they have a reference to work with and to improve. And of course, we cannot talk about process management and quality without talking about Dr. Deming. He is the guru for who actually introduced all these concepts, and that's why I put it in the core in the model. So we look at the processes, global processes, end to end. We don't look at asking for leave or sick leave or asking for holiday leave or whatever. No. We actually have a discussion about this and an argument. When I was doing consultancy, I asked the HR, how many processes do you have? And they say, well, we have 64 processes. And I shake my head and I say, no, we have to make them into 4. 4 is your core processes, and that's what you need to work with. And we discussed that, how do that a little bit later. How do we do in level 1 and level 2 process mapping or cartography. Also, we create a common language. I remember when I generated the process for time to market, we trained something like 10,000 people, because training is some kind of a Poka, which is prevention of error. So you're trying to actually teach people the process, so they don't need to have to refer to a detailed document. They only need to look at the process flowcharts, and that will be enough. And they are all talking about the same language. Also ensure consistency of work, this is the best thing for any process, which is reduction of variation, as you can see in the diagram below. And that's why Six Sigma is very famous with process management, because that's its main goal. Review performance and continually improve. Edward Deming, we have to improve all the time, every day, by everybody, as much as we can. It's a culture of continual improvement, and that's why we need to have the right documentation of the processes, to have them dynamic rather to have them set in stone. Also eliminate redundancies and duplications, which is part of the improvement. We also need business process management to satisfy the organization, to make sure that the organization structure is matching the process maps, and it is actually, there's no silos. We try to break the silos with the process structure in order to have a coherent organization with the processes. Now, this way, this is why we look at the process end to end. We don't need to have the process, we don't document the process in the HR and then in the, for example, sourcing. It is one process all along. Or the sourcing process actually includes HR and technology and whatever in it. So we don't have processes set in silos. It's across end to end. We clarify who does what, of course, in responsibility, especially with the swim lane, which we'll discuss in a minute. So everybody knows who's doing what, as in position. Accountability of the actors, this is where we put the responsibility and authority in the process charts, and you will see that in level 1 of the process. It is actually part of the process documentation. Of course, it changes the culture, because then everybody has the one measure or one ruler that they judge their work with. They have the right KPIs, and their performance is measured based on that. Of course, this sums up the step 1 of our discussion of the 6 steps. Now, if we do the processes very well and we document them, as a lot of companies do, and then we have a new strategic plan, and when we do the strategic plan, we do not review our processes. Well, that's a very common mistake, that processes have to be linked with the strategy. And in most of the strategy maps, like you have a perspective or a layer for process in the strategy map to say, how am I going to improve my processes? It's one of the enablers, like the same as how do I improve my organizational capacity, my processes, in order to achieve the results, which are the customer satisfaction or the customer results and the financial results. So it's balanced and it's there. In this section, I discuss the management responsibility, because it's very important that we apply plan, do, check, act all the way. And you can see it here. You can see that the vision is the plan. You look at the current assessment of the current of the micro and macro environment, like understanding the customers, the competitors, the regulatory, the market, the business, and then you use SWOT, PESTEL, or STEEPLIA now. It's not PESTEL anymore, because they added ethics, the extra E, to create our vision and our objective and our strategic plan. Then we apply the statics, the OPEX and the CAPEX, and the resources, the money. So we have the budget is split into 3 sections rather than 2 sections, OPEX and CAPEX, because we need to identify what are the expenditures for implementation of the strategic projects. Then we need to have the change management, communication plan, etc., in order for people to change, including improving our processes or changing our process outcome to achieve our objectives. And then, of course, we do the operations, and that doesn't work alone. We have to have a continuous review in order to apply the plan, do, study, act. And I use S rather than check, because check is a non-value adding steps in my culture, in my understanding. So we use study, and the management review or the study section of the plan, do, PDCA or PDSA is going to have to result into an action plan. So this is where we talk about the management responsibility. Of course, you cannot talk about business processes without talking about strategy and innovation. So strategy will push the process to improve and to innovate. Total quality management, to do the first thing right every time, for everything right first time every time. And of course, the service excellence model, which is the ISO 23592, which is talking about the service excellence. And of course, the EFQM model, which is now changed, into the direction, execution, and the results. And these, we discussed them briefly, but we don't go into the details because each one of them is another section. But we understand why our business process management system must refer to these, because the design of our cartography must comply with all of these standards, or actually try to achieve the results that are recommended by these standards. The core of the course is understanding the process cartography. And here I really look at the process definition, the process model, because that's really the key that I use to open all the gates in the process documentation and process mapping and re-engineering. Also, we look at the process model, then we look at the level 0, level 1, and level 2 process maps, and I have some examples. Understand the process maps, and of course, as I said in the beginning, if we don't have a happy client, we will not make money and we will not survive. So we look at the Kano model, which is, or some people call it Kano model or Kano model, which we understand and categorize the customer requirements. And then we look at the process mapping techniques and documentation, which I will discuss in a minute. This process model was created in the year 2000, in ISO 9000-2000, but I added something to it. I added the control and the mechanisms, because they called it SIPOC, which is the supplier input, process output, and then outcome. I added in my experience and my actions and work over the last 25 years, I added the controls and the mechanisms. And I use this model to actually build the process management based on the vision and the mission of the organization. So the mission of the organization and the vision must achieve an outcome. Now, for the process, it is the process of the company. There is an output that they are delivering. Of course, that's coming from your suppliers, from your customers, feedback, and from the material or the raw material that's happening. And then that's processed, and then we achieve the outcome. But we cannot forget and ignore the controls are necessary. The training, as I said, it is the best way to make sure that the business continuity is done, so everybody will understand what are the processes. What are the procedures or the specifications, or you can call them work instructions, that are governing our processes? What is the needed legislations? Because that's very important, regulatory. What are the objectives and targets and budgets that I have? Because our processes must comply with these. Now, we can add the controls and then later on put KPIs on them, but we need to understand also what are the mechanisms that I'm using. What is the software, the hardware? Who are we using? Are we using full-time employees? Are we using contractors? What software availability? Are we secure in our mechanisms? Do we have a cybersecurity system, which might be added actually in the controls, but it has to be measured and analyzed in the mechanisms. Of course, that will generate an output. This output is either sold or output which is maintained, which is normally information, which we call its byproduct. So we need to identify them because we need to monetize the byproducts of our output. And then we understand what is the output, what are the things, what are the quality control on the output, and how much waste are we doing to achieve that output. We understand what does the customer want. That's why we look at Kano model. And then if we do our processes, are we achieving our outcome or not? Are we achieving the goals of the processes, which should be aligned with the goals of the organization? And you can call them goals, objectives, vision, targets, whatever. So each process has to comply with that and actually achieve it or influence it. This is the Kano model, and this is a Kano model that we discuss for any design of process or review or re-engineering of a process. This is used in marketing, it's used in Six Sigma, it's used in process management, and it's used in actually product design. Now, what we need to understand here, what are the basic needs that we have to achieve to actually guarantee that our output is accepted by our customers. So for any process, we need to look at what are the basic needs that they have to be done. For example, I need to recruit. So what are the basic needs for recruitment? Is it the right talent that will stay for a long time and be part of the team, has the right qualification, the right experience, but also the right attitudes? These are basic needs. And that has to be done by a certain timeline. It cannot be done in 6 months. It has to be done by the target time that is specified in our resource planning from HR and from the department in order to achieve the company objective. So if that's not done in time, then it failed, and that's a defect in the process. Then we say, what is more performance? How can we make it better all the time? If we measure it, then we have to improve it. And that's how we put some sticky notes on what will be performance. So we put the basic needs, and we put the sticky notes, and we document them. They are the quality control on the output of the process, and they are the quality control on the outcome of the process. So it's not only the output, it's also the outcome. And of course, how do I do the delighters? How do I make it even much better? And how do I create the net promoter score, higher net promoter score to the customer of the process? Now, for example, the customer of the recruitment is not the customers. It could be the recruitment agency, it could be the employee that we're going to recruiting, and most importantly, it will be the person who actually requested for this. And finally, it is also the company management, because they are using these resources to achieve the business results, and customer results. So we need to understand that this model is used for all the customers. What are the needs for the requester of the training, of the recruit, and what are the requirements of the recruited, and what is the requirement are the requirements of the recruitment agency, if we have, and so forth. So we use that into all the clients of the process, and it's very important. Once we've done that, then we look at the whole organization must have a process map. And this is an introduction, a system that I introduced back in 2008, I think, and it was never done before. And this is where we divide, using this model, the process model, we divide the organization into core processes, support processes, and control processes. You see the similarity, it's all aligned. So this is an example that I'll generate from the mission of the organization and from the strategic plan. These are the core processes in the gray, these ones. Over the top, of course, they're just for the size of the slide, they're more than this. These are the control or governance processes, and these are the support or the enablers processes. So HR is not a core process. HR is somewhere here. Public relation, corporate social responsibility. Of course, that could be here and could be on top, based on the organization. Normally, when I come to the organization to build their process management system, this takes me at least 1 month, because there's going to be a lot of agendas that we need to look at and a lot of conflicts that we need to sort out. And we just look at the mission of the organization and say that all core processes must comply with the mission. If it's not in the mission, why is it a core process? So this is the first level that I discuss and design with organization, and we teach that in the course. Now, these processes must have performance KPIs, and normally they're lagging KPIs, of course. They are in line with the company's strategic objectives. Because if you do portfolio management and you're not achieving the targeted markets, for example, or the market share, or the market segmentation, or the market positioning, well, your process is not actually delivering the outcome, and the outcome is here in the objective. We discussed that in details, and that's a model that really makes a big difference for management when they document their process management system, of course. And that is easily done electronically as well. It could be done on SharePoint, it could be done with other software that are available in the market. And then you can link each process with the details that is coming next, and with the KPIs and with the objectives. And that will give you a complete view from the high level, helicopter view or eagle-eye view of the company performance, company processes, drilling down as you need into understanding the details. And all the KPIs, of course, are linked with that. Now, the level 1 process map, this is an introduction, a system that I introduced when we launched Time to Market in Orange Group. And this is really a beautiful view of your processes, documented in 6 or 7 or 8 processes, starting from the planning, again, plan, do, study, act, strategic plan, operational plan, technology plan, etc., and ending up with a review where we have the KPIs and then a review process that gives me the feedback into the plan again, or into the various steps. Now, as you notice in this diagram, what I do is I put the high-level process map of whatever we're talking about, and then we put layers. And you can see here, these layers or these lines, swim lanes, are the control. This is the process owner, customer care. These are the support functions like technology, marketing, and sales. And in each step, we document what are the specific tasks for each organization or department into that they have to do in this step. Now that is an end-to-end process map, and it actually cuts through the whole organizational chart. There's no, of course, we do that for every process in the organization, every core process and every support process. And this is how I changed the, I don't know, 80 something HR processes into only four processes. And this is how we do it in the level 1. In the level 2, which is the detailed, this is sometimes needed, sometimes it's not needed. But again, we have to discuss it and we have to learn how to do it. I did discuss the activity flow chart, which is normally done in the analysis phase and the documentation phase. And then the final one, which is the deployment flow chart, which is called swim lane. And we then do examples in the course. This is just a very short example of a small example of a process. So it's company department, HR department, and management. And we can then draw it, and that's level 2. And no organizational standard or excellence model require any more than that. They don't. And I mean, documenting the details of each one is just a waste of time and more complications. This is normally the realization that you have when you start building your cartography, is that this is what you think it is, the one on the left. This is what actually it is because of the long period of time, the added of mistakes, and then how to solve the mistakes by adding more steps and more complications and more decisions. And what it really should be is only 3 steps, because this is the best practice. Of course, we don't normally go all the way through. We create from the as is the opportunity flow chart, which I will discuss in a minute. This is the opportunity flow chart where we select how can we improve this process and remove slowly and effectively the non-value adding steps, and that will be discussed in a minute. So in the step 4, we cannot discuss, if I said why do we need BPM and we said for the happy client, well, we need to understand because the customers do not look at our processes. They don't care about our processes. So I discuss in this section how is my process complicating or simplifying the customer journey. And of course, we do a little example, and this is the model that I use, which is how to convert from awareness to advocacy in any customer. Of course, we do this customer journey map for each segment, for each persona. Yeah. So we select the persona we do a Kano model first, then we select the persona and the segment, and then we do a map the customer journey. It is a very effective way to actually ensure that the customer experience is actually achieved, the better customer experience, because the third definition for the customer experience is the sum of all interactions with the brand. And that's why I start from the awareness, not from the purchase or the interaction. And here we talk about what is the action, what are the touch points that I'm using, is it a happy moment or is it a pain moment, and then what are the opportunities for improvement. That can be done in the course, we discuss it, but not in more details like we do it in other courses, but at least we have to understand there is a relationship. If we complicate our processes and that will complicate our customer journey, then we are in the wrong path. We need to make sure that customer journey is simple in order to achieve the best customer effort score. So we talk about that then. In step 5, we look at manage process performance, and here very simply we look at what are the KPIs that we can use and what is the current status. What is the benchmark that we want to go? Is it either we use the benchmark as our baseline or the benchmark that we want to achieve? And then we start putting the plans to improve that. And that will be helped by the next section, which is how to improve the process and to improve performance. So here we look at the defined performance monitoring and understand the difference between output and outcome. And this is what I discussed before. We don't want to just produce chairs. We want to produce chairs that will sell and will achieve profit. Or we don't want to train people, that's an output, trainee, but training the people is not going to be the output, the outcome that we want. We train people to achieve an outcome, and the outcome is to increase our skill capacity of the organization. Why? It's not the only outcome. There's a final outcome, to improve our performance or to achieve our goals. So training people, if this is a training process, the output is a trainee, how many trainees, how many training courses, but we have to achieve the outcome, which is the knowledge, acquisition, or the knowledge, the human capital knowledge for the company. And there's a scoring for that and everything. So I use here an example of a restaurant. We can produce food, and people might eat it, and we make some money. But if the people are not recommending our food, they're not happy with the service, not only the food, also the service, then our customers will not be happy, and eventually we will lose our brand image. And that's the final goal that we want to achieve, which is to improve the brand image. So we look at how do we generate KPIs. Now, this is for the output and the outcome, but also we need to have the right input, and we use KPIs for that. We need to have the right mechanisms and the utilization of these mechanisms, availability of software, utilization of people. They are very important KPIs to achieve the outcome and the output. Of course, are we controlling the budget? Are we complying with the regulatory requirements? Are we applying the right cycle time targets? Because that's going to be cost as well. So we look at this model, which we use for the understanding of the process of the organization process map. Now we use it for actually defining the KPIs on the outcome and the output level, and of course on the control of the mechanisms. Of course, we use also the swim lane or the activity flow chart to generate KPIs. Every step is a candidate for measurement, and we can see that every decision box is a candidate for measurement and a candidate for improvement. And in the course, they actually do that, and they select the process, and we put the KPIs. And this is very important. Then you realize the process is not only to achieve the output, it's understanding here, how am I achieving it and how can I improve it? Because if you measure it, you can improve it. Finally, what we look at is continual improvement. Now, here there are many methods that are used around the world, and I discuss topics or methods that I have used and we've mastered in our team and have actually impacted the bottom line. So if you want to improve, you have to impact the company objectives. The things that we can discuss and we can use in our methodology is the learning by doing and applying the PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act, Plan, Do, Study, Act, because that's, if you measure it, then you start looking at, am I achieving the target? Is my baseline right? Is it better than our competitors? Are we keeping our customers happier? So there's a cycle of continual improvement that we introduced with Dr. Edward Deming cycle of improvement, continual improvement. Of course, we look at, if we want to improve, we need to look at what is the best benchmark. So there are other ways of benchmarking, different ways of benchmarking, either benchmarking to create my baseline or benchmarking to create what I want to achieve plus. So I add the plus to it because I don't want to be following our competitors or best practices. Normally, I need to customize it to my culture, because benchmarking is normally done as a reference, yeah, but it doesn't apply to every company the same way. So we need to take into consideration, is our culture in the organization or in the country where we're operating or in our customers actually compliant with the benchmarking that we're doing. So we need to adapt the benchmark to our culture and to our organizational culture, our customers' culture, and our country culture. So benchmarking is a good tool, but it's dangerous if you just apply it as it is. So I discussed that in more details. Now, explain the lean thinking, Kaizen. I love Kaizen. I've used Kaizen for a long time, and it is one of the best methodologies that Toyota created the Camry out of, that many companies in Japan actually improved, and that is now applied worldwide. And this is where Edward Deming, Dr. Deming, actually, you have an award in his name in Japan, and they adapted it into their culture, and they called it Kaizen. And also Six Sigma, because of course Six Sigma is a very complicated methodology, but I touch on it because you have to understand what is Six Sigma. So we talked about benchmarking, we talked about Plan, Do, Check, Act, Plan, Do, Study, Act, and lean thinking and Kaizen. Of course, Kaizen is continual improvement, and it's incremental change by everybody, everywhere, all the time. This is the simple identification of what is Kaizen about. So everybody has to improve, everywhere, every day, by everybody. So this resulted in Toyota to have 60 to 70 ideas for improvement every year for each employee. And the improvement doesn't have to be big projects or big, it could be just changing of steps. It could be adding a little tool. Normally it is very little budget or zero budget for Kaizen, and it's done everywhere by the people who are doing the work. Normally we don't create a Kaizen team that will go around and suggest improvements. The suggestion of improvements must be done by the people who are doing the work. And we discussed that in details, and this is the culture of continuous improvement. And Kaizen works with eliminating waste, so we need to identify the waste, which I will discuss in a minute, simplify the process, and generalize the best practice everywhere where it can be applied. And the idea is that to tackle daily work issues permanently is about identifying and prioritization of issues, finding the root cause, so root cause analysis, and choosing the right solution. This is how the Kaizen works. And of course, these are the wastes that are identified, the 3M, the Muda, Mura, and Muri, and each one of them has different methodologies to improve. But normally Muda is the one that we choose, which is the 8 wastes from talent, waiting time, waste of talent, which means I'm not using the full talent capacity of the organization, waiting time, mistakes or rework, overproduction, transportation, stock and inventory, movement, overprocessing. Now, they all don't apply in everywhere, but some of them will apply where you are working. And during the course, we actually discussed that, and I asked people to identify which one of these is most common in his organization. Normally, these wastes will reduce costs, and if it reduces costs, it will improve profitability, and then the organization will benefit from it. And this is a very common tool that everybody is using, and there's a methodology that proved to be very effective by identifying this. This is the opportunity flow chart that we will discuss, which is we normally document the process as is, and you can see this is the process of photocopying or the opening photocopying a document, and this could be very complex. So what we do in Six Sigma and in Kaizen and in Lean, the 3 methodologies, they separate the value-adding steps from the non-value adding. And then we start identifying by opportunity flowchart, highlighting the steps that we can remove, but it has to be done with using the Kaizen methodology or the Plan, Do, Check, Act to actually remove them safely without causing disruptions or causing resistance. But there's another tool that we use, which is time and capacity assessment. And here where we say we separate the value adding time from the non-value adding time. It is like value chain mapping or value stream mapping. It's the same tool, but we use it simply by identifying the cycle time. And this is an example that I use. This is 10 steps of a process, and you can see each one we calculate the time is required for each step. And you find that step 3 and step 8 are the ones which are adding value. And that's 2% of the process. Now, we cannot eliminate all the 98% of the process, 100% the first time, but we start looking how can we reduce the waste, like fixing errors, reducing the number of errors, reducing variation, control and inspection. Why do we need it? Well, why not to train people? Delays, is there a planning for capacity of the people? Is the steps of the process are having bottlenecks? That's what normally happens. Of course, transportation motion, if it can be eliminated, that would be good. But this is the visual analysis of the process non-value adding matrix. Based on that, we do select by the priority matrix. We select what is the problem that we need to tackle, and we use the 5W and 1H or 2H. There's 2 methods to identify or qualify the problem. And that way we can then identify what is the problem and focus the problem statement. Then we use the 5 whys to identify what is the root cause, and that's a very common tool that we use it in process improvement, in Six Sigma, in Kaizen, in Lean. 5 whys, we keep asking why until we find the root cause, and then we draw either a fishbone diagram or a tree diagram. For example, here customers are dissatisfied with waiting time in the store, and you'll find that the bottom one is the main root cause, the green ones, and our scheduling, request for complex transactions. We don't plan our schedule. So you see here, from what we have, the scheduling is a big problem. there's other problems. So maybe we focus on the scheduling, because that's maybe 90% of the errors or the delays or the problems with the customers are because of the scheduling. So we do a Pareto to analyze which one has the biggest impact or relationship with dissatisfaction in our store. So tree diagram is another tool that we use using my 5 whys. We also use fishbone diagram. It is a lot more complex, but I introduce it during the session, and we practice it if we have time. Of course, once we know the root cause, that's 50% of the solution. So we identify what is the solution that we need to have. So we have solution A, B, C, and D, and we look at which is the most important and the easier. And we start with that. And with Kaizen, we always use the easy change, because it's maybe many small changes that will improve the process rather than a big project applying a system or a software, because we can do that, of course, but that's not what I'm looking for in Kaizen. Another tool that we use, which is 5S, is a very common tool that has been used in many organizations, especially in production lines, in offices, where we sort the things that we have, we set them in order, then we shine, then any waste will be removed, we standardize so everybody knows how to do it, and then we sustain by documenting it and by training people. It's another methodology that I discuss in details in this course as well. Six Sigma also, we look at the definition of Six Sigma, which is a disciplined, customer-centric, data-driven approach for efficiently and continually improving the process quality and impacting the bottom line. This is the main issue, and we look at how do we use Six Sigma, the 2 methodologies. We normally use only the MAYAC, because define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, rather than design for Six Sigma, because that's done in very highly sensitive operations or processes. So the MAYAC, we discussed the MAYAC, each phase of them is discussed during the session. Of course, if you want to do all of that, you need to manage change, and change, you need to have a right vision, you need to have an actionable strategy, the capabilities of the people that are doing the work. You have to have incentives, because otherwise people will not remove and there will be a lot of resistance. And you have to have the right resources, people and money, and you have to have the urgency. If you have the 6 elements, then you have success. If you don't, you will have a failure of some kind. So for example, if you don't have vision, you'll have confusion. For example, if you don't have incentives, you'll have resistance and restraint. If you don't have urgency, you'll have apathy. They just push it till tomorrow or the after tomorrow. So this is a very nice slide that we discuss in details. And also, it is applicable. It works. And it's a reminder, like a checklist, to make sure that these 6 elements are always there. Of course, to maintain the process management system into operations and not lose the momentum, which is urgency, you need to do audits. And in audits, you actually maintain the process audits to make sure that what you're improving is actually done, and what you are documenting is actually being done. And there are no changes to the processes without actually documentation, or there's no reverting back to the old methods of work. And that's me, finished. Lynn, any questions? At 45 minutes on the spot.
Thank you so much, Amin. That was really good. Very, very informative. Thank you so much. A lot of information there. So we do have some questions and answers in the chat, which I'll read out for you. So Hassan is asking, how do you align process mapping, customer journey, and KPI design to ensure they drive the same strategic goals?
Excellent question. Fantastic question. Actually, you remember in my discussion, Hassan, is it?
It is, yes.
Yes. Hassan, in my discussion, I said I linked everything with the vision, mission, objectives, and strategic plan. So in the process model, in the process cartography that we did, we always said that we have to link the operation and the processes into achieving the objectives and the objectives targets, KPIs. Now, in the strategy map, in the customer journey, if the customer journey does not achieve the customer-related objectives, then we have a problem. If the brand is impacted by our bad customer journey, then that's a problem. So we put the measures of the customer journey linked again with the processes and with the strategic objectives. And of course, if the improvement of the process is not in line with our process perspective into the strategic plan, which is improving the process, reducing the cycle time, improving the process efficiency, effectiveness. So they are all, the main governing factor is the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is impacted by process, performance, understanding of the people of the process, understanding the goals of each process by the actors, then identifying what is the customer journey, what are the goals that I want to achieve, what are the pain moments and the happy moments, how can I maintain the happy moments and reduce the pain moments, how can I use Kaizen or process improvement or improvement methods, continual improvement methods to remove the pain moments from the customer through either changing the process, changing the people who are doing the work, etc. And eventually, how do I use the tools to actually continually improve the three elements, the processes, the customer journey, my performance targets into achieving the goals of the organization. Excellent question.
Thank you. Shaheen has written a couple of questions. I think your answer there may have just answered one of those, but there's one that's specific to HR. And it's talking about how can HR and quality management system processes be linked for better efficiency? So the onboarding, training, competency, tracking, etc.
Excellent question. Again, you see, this is what I teach in this course, is that you don't look at the output of the process. And the first thing that you do is Kano model. And you identify what are the customer needs. Now, in my discussions with HR, when consultancy, or for example, sourcing, they say, well, who's your customer? And they say, oh, my customer is management. I have to comply with the budget. Well, that's not true. So what we need to do is to design the HR processes in order for them to achieve all the clients' requirements, including the requester, the strategic plan, their resource development plan or HR planning, budgets, and the employee that we're getting. So if they're doing a recruitment, for example, recruitment in 20 days, and they're getting the people on board very quickly. Onboarding is done with them and IT and the facilities. But the customer, the recruit that they brought in leaves after 2 months because he's not happy. He doesn't have the right experience. He doesn't have the right attitude. Well, then that process has failed. They delivered the output, but they did not deliver the outcome. And this is the major change.
Thank you. I think we've got time for just a couple more questions. So Rakhaven has said, can we adopt these principles into medium-sized companies as well?
I developed them into Mike-sized company, which is 2 people. and Lynn knows I have versions of my training or my consultancy is changed every year. I review it, I improve it, I get the feedback from Informa about the customer feedback, and then I start improving. And as I'm delivering each course or each consultancy work, I always seek customer feedback. And that customer feedback is actually incorporated in the next action. Not only that, I need to understand what are the competitors doing, what is new. Like, for example, EFQM changed their model in 2022. Like, for example, this new service model has been come up, this new service excellence model. It only came 2022. It's not even completed yet. I mean, people are just discussing how to do that. If I don't have that knowledge of actually understanding what is the macro environment that I'm working with, then I will not be able to achieve the results. And I will not be able to keep you happy when you're coming to any of the courses. So yes, it can be applied to a single person. It can be applied to a company with 20,000 people. It can be applied to your home. 5S can be applied to your garage, your kitchen. Your Kaizen can be approved and done in your workshop, at home, in your garden, etc., etc. It can be applied everywhere.
Thank you. And then just finally, Khaled has a question saying, is there any relation between KPIs and KRIs?
Of course, yes. KRI is a KPI. KRI, key risk indicators, is one of the 5 families of KPIs, and I deliver KPIP course. So key risk indicators, people's indicators, project indicators, project KPIs, strategic KPIs, and operational KPIs. Of course, KPI is an envelope for all of these.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Amin. I think that's all we have time for questions, etc. So as Amin has said, he does deliver a lot of different training programs with Informa Connect Academy. We've just got here a couple of examples of what he does. So obviously measuring, monitoring, improving customer experience, the business process mapping that he's talked about as well. But also Informa Connect is now partnered with EFQM, and we're proud that Amin has now become a certified assessor, and he can do the training with Informa. So that's also courses Six Sigma. So this just gives you an idea of the types of courses, balanced scorecard as well. So Amin is also a balanced scorecard expert. So this just gives you an idea of the type of courses that we have. On the next slide, there's a QR code. If you would like to scan this QR code, this will take you to our Informa Connect Academy page where you can get some more details of that particular QR code. I'll just leave that there for just a second before I move on to the next slide. Our website is there, our telephone number, etc. But this QR code can take you directly to all the upcoming courses. And then just finally, yes, we are a training company, conferences, exhibitions, we do webinars, but we do post a lot of information on our social medias, so we're always putting information on topics, etc., onto our LinkedIn profile, for instance. So this QR code here, if you'd like to scan that, that will take you to our LinkedIn community. As I say, and if you follow us, Informa, we are posting a lot of different information on a number of different portfolios. So not just anything in business process, but anything to do with strategy, marketing, finance, project management, HR. There's a number of different portfolios that we work with. So please feel free to scan this code so that you can join our community. And with that, I will say thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for attending. I hope that you found this information from Amin very enriching. There's some really lovely comments in the chat, so thank you for that, about people saying that it's been some really great content. So thank you to everybody that attended. As I said before, we will share a recording of this session, not the slides, but we will share the recording with you. And Amin, again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this webinar. Some great information in there. Every day is a school day. I'm always learning as well. So thank you so much for all that content. Really do appreciate it.
I'm always learning. Yes. This is the
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is the only thing we do until we die. We learn the last thing, how to die. Yeah, we always learn.
So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us in today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.
What if you and your team can be even more informed, competitive, accomplished, even more successful, with programs designed to inspire and empower everyone to become even more. Introducing Informa Connect Academy. With hundreds of global, digital, and in-person training courses led by world-renowned industry experts, reimagining learning experiences for even more unlocked potential. Informa Connect Academy, available at informaconnect.com/academy.